Okay.
But no, I wouldn't say history overwhelms me. Other things overwhelm me, but not history, no. Because I think if you're not careful, history can be a real weight and an anchor around you.
The silence inside Windsor Castle ended with one sentence. Prince William placed a file before King Charles and declared that Queen Camilla had privately negotiated favors, access, and future influence with several Royal Warrant vendors. This was not gossip whispered through palace corridors. It was a direct accusation from the future king, supported by correspondence, meeting records, and names powerful enough to shake the monarchy's most guarded commercial tradition. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. William had not entered that room on instinct. Minutes earlier, the prince had stood alone in the corridor, rereading an email in which one vendor promised continued discretion in return for privileged access. He folded the page, forcing his anger into control before facing his father. The confidential dossier, a file collecting evidence, dates, and testimony, showed that suppliers had been encouraged to assist Camilla's relatives while believing their royal standing could be protected. Charles understood the danger. A royal warrant is an official mark showing that a company regularly supplies the royal household, and it carries prestige and value. If that honor had been influenced by personal favors, public trust in the crown could collapse. The king read 3 pages without speaking. When he reached Camilla's name beside a list of meetings, he removed his glasses and placed them on the desk. William watched his father's face change, but he did not retreat. The future king explained that vendors had been offered access and hints of approval through the Queen Consort's office. One company had provided discounted services to people close to her. Another had been told that loyalty would be remembered when warrant decisions returned for review. The arrangement looked less like courtesy and more like influence, traded behind palace doors. Charles finally asked whether his son understood what would happen if the accusation became official. William remained standing. "I understand the consequences of hiding it," he replied. The prince delivered his ultimatum. Every affected warrant had to be frozen. Every vendor had to be questioned. Camilla had to be removed from recommendations until the full truth was known. Charles felt the choice pressing against him: protect his wife or protect the institution he had sworn to serve. Then, the file revealed something worse. The first name on the contact list was not Camilla's. It belonged to a palace aide who had served the household for decades. As Charles stared at that name, the dispute stopped being a clash between husband and son. It became a battle over the network that had helped the Queen build her private influence. Behind the commercial language of warrants, suppliers, and private appointments stood 3 people facing 3 different disasters. William feared the crown was being quietly compromised before he inherited it. Camilla feared that years of carefully built authority could collapse in a single afternoon. Charles feared something more personal, that defending his wife might weaken the monarchy, while abandoning her could destroy the marriage he had spent most of his life protecting. William carried the burden differently from everyone else. As heir, the prince viewed the monarchy's reputation as something he would one day inherit along with the throne. A royal warrant, the official mark showing that a company supplies the royal household, was valuable because the public trusted the crown behind it. Every hidden favor therefore looked to him like a future crisis, waiting to arrive under his reign. Camilla saw the same system through another lens. The Queen Consort had spent years moving from public controversy to royal acceptance, and her links with respected suppliers gave her office influence beyond traditional palace advisors. Those companies returned calls, offered access, and treated her circle with loyalty. Losing that network would not merely embarrass her. It would strip away part of the authority she had fought to build. The message reached her during an afternoon briefing. Camilla dismissed the aides around the table, remained seated, and asked the same question more than once. Which correspondence did William possess? Her voice stayed controlled, but the silence after each answer became heavier. She understood that the prince had not simply challenged a business arrangement. He had placed Charles between his wife and his duty. Charles moved carefully. The king ordered his private secretary to keep the matter within a small circle until he had spoken to Camilla himself. At the same time, he gave a second instruction. No vendor record could be removed, changed, or destroyed. That order revealed the truth he was not yet ready to say aloud. He wanted to protect his marriage, but he no longer trusted the situation. One name inside the file made the danger personal. A supplier seeking renewal of royal recognition had also completed private work for members of Camilla's family. The services had been offered on favorable terms, while the company remained in contact with her office. To William, it looked like benefit exchanged for influence. To Charles, it looked like a question only his wife could answer. Camilla entered the study expecting reassurance. Instead, she found the dossier placed between two chairs. Charles did not reach for her hand. He pointed toward the file and quietly asked her to explain the meetings. She called the arrangements harmless. Then she admitted one crucial meeting had taken place without the official warrant committee, the group responsible for reviewing royal suppliers. That concealed meeting became the crack through which everything else emerged, leading back to one evening when a promise was made behind closed doors. The crisis had not begun with William's dossier. It began 8 months earlier at a private dinner inside Clarence's house, where Camilla met the chairman of an established luxury supplier after the official guests had departed. No committee members remained. No formal advisor recorded the exchange. Only one senior aide stayed behind, as the Queen Consort made a promise that would later become the center of the prince's case, and the point of no return for everyone involved. Camilla had spent years building a close network around her office. Companies supplying clothing, household goods, food, and ceremonial services had learned that access to her staff could open important doors. A royal warrant, the formal mark showing that a business regularly serves the royal household, carried enormous public value. Renewal was supposed to depend on service and standards, never private gifts, personal favors, or quiet promises. The dinner changed everything. Camilla told vendor chairman Julian Harcourt that she would personally remember his company's loyalty during the next warrant review if he helped with refurbishment work at a property used by her relatives. Harcourt understood the meaning. The supplier could offer assistance now and hope royal approval would protect his company later. Sir Malcolm Vane heard every word. The longtime courtier froze, but he waited until Harcourt had left before speaking. Malcolm warned Camilla that personal help could not be linked, even indirectly, to royal recognition. He reminded her that one careless promise could make the crown look available to anyone willing to provide private benefit. Camilla rejected the warning. The Queen Consort insisted no money had changed hands and argued that rewarding loyalty was part of maintaining valuable relationships. Her anger sharpened when Malcolm suggested recording the exchange. She told him the conversation had been informal and ordered him to leave it there. Malcolm did not obey. The aide returned to his office, wrote a dated memorandum describing the promise, and placed it inside a restricted administrative file. A memorandum is a written internal record used to preserve important facts or decisions. He feared that silence might later make him appear responsible for allowing the arrangement to continue. Months passed before the note surfaced. William's staff discovered it while reviewing unexplained vendor access requests linked to an upcoming royal event. The prince ordered a wider examination and read the memorandum twice in his Kensington Palace office. William underlined the words, "Personally remember." Then his pen snapped against the page. The document proved the promise, but it raised a darker question. Had Camilla acted alone, or had others helped protect the arrangement? With the dinner reconstructed and the secret preserved in writing, William no longer wanted explanations from aides. He wanted the truth from Camilla herself, face to face. There were no secretaries in the room, no lawyers waiting beside the walls, and no king to soften the words. William entered carrying the memorandum from Clarence's house. Camilla was already standing beside the fireplace, her expression controlled but her hands tightly joined. When the door closed, the future king placed the paper on the table and asked one question. Had she promised royal protection to a vendor in exchange for private assistance to her family? Camilla had agreed to the meeting only after demanding complete privacy. No recording secretary would take notes, and no committee representative would witness the exchange. A recording secretary is the official who preserves an accurate written account of important royal discussions. She wanted no institutional buffer between herself and William. But that choice also meant there would be nowhere to hide once the questions began. William came prepared. The prince carried the memorandum, private emails, access logs, and invoices linking Julian Harcourt's company to work performed outside official royal accounts. Those records mattered because they connected royal influence to personal benefit. If the crown's name had encouraged special treatment, the damage would reach far beyond one family dispute. Camilla struck first. The queen consort accused him of treating her like an intruder who could never earn his trust. She said he had twisted normal relationship building into a scandal because he had always resented her influence over Charles. Her voice sharpened with every sentence, but William refused to follow her into the past. William held his anger in place. He told her this was not about affection, history, or forgiveness. It was about whether the monarchy had been used to secure favors for people close to her. The future king reminded her that royal approval belonged to the institution, not to any individual who happened to hold influence inside it. Camilla denied promising Harcourt a warrant renewal. Then, she admitted something worse. She had continued speaking with him through a private telephone after palace advisors ordered all vendor contact to remain on official channels. Those missing messages could not be reviewed, and the absence made every denial harder to believe. William pressed again. Camilla finally disclosed that Harcourt was not the only supplier involved. Another vendor had funded a private hospitality event attended by members of her extended family, while seeking greater access to her office. The prince pushed the invoices toward her. Camilla did not look down. She removed a ring, placed it beside the papers, and said she would not be interrogated like a criminal inside her own home. William gave his answer without raising his voice. Until every contact was disclosed, he would recommend removing her office from the Royal Warrant process. Camilla left convinced Charles would protect her. She did not know the king was already deciding whether devotion could survive duty. The most painful decision was not made during the confrontation. It came later, in a smaller room, beneath the weight of a single unsigned order. Charles sat before the document that would freeze Camilla's involvement with Royal Warrant recommendations and authorize an independent audit of her office. The pen lay beside his hand. Across from him, William waited without speaking. For the first time, the monarch's authority and the husband's loyalty could not occupy the same chair. Charles still held the final power. The king alone could remove Camilla from warrant matters, even though William had exposed the evidence. A royal warrant recommendation is the formal process through which trusted suppliers are considered for royal approval. If the monarch failed to act, every safeguard around that process would appear weaker than personal loyalty. The pressure tightened around him. The Lord Chamberlain, the senior official responsible for managing the royal household, warned that silence would look like protection. Members of the Warrant Committee agreed. They told Charles that vendors were already discussing what Camilla's support might secure for them, and once that belief spread, the crown's name would become a private bargaining tool. Charles searched for another path. He asked whether a warning could replace suspension, but the advisors did not soften their answer. 11 private contacts had been identified between Camilla's staff and vendor representatives. Several took place shortly before renewal discussions or major royal engagements. The pattern was too clear to dismiss as coincidence. William watched his father struggle. The prince felt no victory in the room. He understood that every argument for accountability pushed Charles closer to a decision that could damage their relationship forever. The future king had exposed the truth, but truth now carried a personal cost neither man could avoid. Sir Malcolm Vane made that cost heavier through a documented statement submitted to the review. The senior aide confirmed that he had warned Camilla repeatedly against informal promises. Malcolm also revealed that 2 meetings had disappeared from her official diary after questions were raised. An official diary is the household record used to track royal appointments and contacts. Removing entries suggested concealment, not confusion. Charles lifted the pen, then stopped. He asked everyone except William to leave. The silence between father and son felt heavier than any accusation. Charles looked at him and said, "You have brought me the truth, but you have also brought me the cost." William did not answer. The king signed. The order froze Camilla's authority, suspended the implicated vendors, and placed her private office under immediate review. The ink had barely dried when Charles carried the decision upstairs, where his wife was waiting for protection that would never arrive. Camilla recognized the document before Charles spoke. The red folder was reserved for decisions that could not be softened through private conversation. She remained seated, as he explained that her warrant authority had been frozen, her staff records secured, and the vendors placed under review. For several seconds, she showed no reaction. Then she asked whether William had won. Charles answered that the crown had been protected, and the distance between them suddenly became impossible to ignore. Camilla's office felt the consequences immediately. Every pending vendor meeting was cancelled. Access to recommendation files was removed, and staff members were ordered to surrender private correspondence connected to suppliers. A warrant recommendation file is the official record used when deciding whether a company should receive or keep royal approval. Losing access meant the Queen Consort no longer had any influence over that process. Charles watched her absorb the words. Harcourt's company and the second supplier had both lost their warrant status, while investigators examined whether services, hospitality, or special treatment had been exchanged for influence. The king knew what that meant. This was no longer an internal warning. It was a public stain waiting to spread. Camilla stood slowly. She lifted the briefing folder bearing her personal cipher, the royal symbol used to mark documents from her office, and handed it to Charles. Her face remained controlled, but her voice shook as she asked whether he now considered her unfit to serve beside him. Charles tried to separate the decision from their marriage. He told her the order concerned conduct, not devotion. Camilla answered that the monarchy had never separated those things when it needed her loyalty. Her words landed with force, because both of them knew how much she had endured to stand beside him. The damage deepened within hours. A junior aide provided investigators with deleted calendar invitations showing vendors had attended private gatherings where royal recognition was openly discussed. Records also revealed discounted services, waived fees, and priority access given to people inside Camilla's family circle after meetings with her office. The pattern no longer looked accidental. Charles left without finding the words that could repair the moment. Camilla remained alone. She pulled one chair away from the table where they normally reviewed engagements together, moved it against the wall, and closed the door herself. William received confirmation that the suspension had taken effect. The prince showed no triumph. He asked whether his father was alone, cancelled an evening engagement, and left to see him. The investigation had stripped Camilla of influence, but the deeper wound now belonged to Charles, and William could no longer pretend that duty had left his father untouched. That evening, William found Charles alone, with the investigation file closed beside him. No advisors entered. No officials offered carefully prepared language. The king looked older than he had that morning, and the prince suddenly saw not the monarch who had signed the order, but a father who believed his family was collapsing around him. What followed was not an argument over Camilla. It was a reckoning over the crown itself. William had come without staff. Charles dismissed his equerry, the personal aide who assists a senior royal with daily duties, leaving father and son without witnesses, formal minutes, or prepared explanations. That privacy mattered, because neither man could hide behind procedure now. The king had protected the institution, but the decision had placed his marriage under strain and exposed how quickly his heir could challenge choices made during his reign. Charles spoke first. He told William that he had spent decades defending Camilla's place beside him. The monarch had endured public anger, family resistance, and private warnings, because he believed loyalty demanded it. Now he feared the country would look at the scandal and decide that every old accusation about the queen consort had finally been proved right. William did not answer quickly. The prince admitted that he had held the dossier for several days before presenting it. He knew the evidence would hurt Charles. For a moment, the future king had considered confronting the vendors quietly and keeping Camilla's name outside the inquiry. But secrecy, he said, would have become another form of corruption. Charles looked directly at his son. He asked whether William still trusted his judgment as king. The question changed everything. It revealed that the damage had moved beyond Camilla and reached the bond between sovereign and heir. William understood that the wrong answer could turn duty into permanent resentment. William chose his words carefully. He said trust did not require silence. The crown could survive humiliation, he argued, but it could not survive a family agreement to hide wrongdoing. Charles heard the truth in that answer, even though it wounded him. The king opened the dossier, removed the signed suspension order, and held it out. He told William to oversee the reforms personally. The prince would rebuild the warrant system and ensure that no royal office could privately influence it again. William did not take the document immediately. He first sat beside his father and promised that accountability would not become revenge against Camilla. Charles finally released the order into his hands. By dawn, father and son had chosen duty without vengeance. Outside the palace gates, however, the country was preparing its own verdict. The scandal became public beneath a photograph no palace official could control. A national newspaper filled its front page with an image of William leaving Windsor beneath the headline, "Heir freezes Queen's royal deals." By mid-morning, crowds had gathered near Buckingham Palace, holding copies above the barriers, as broadcasters debated whether the prince had saved the monarchy or shattered its appearance of unity. One private confrontation had become a public test of royal integrity. Buckingham Palace responded before the pressure could grow further. The statement confirmed a review of Royal Warrant procedures, the suspension of selected vendors, and William's appointment to supervise reform. A royal warrant is the formal sign that a company regularly supplies the royal household. So any suggestion that access had been traded for private benefit struck directly at public trust. Broadcasters framed the story as a collision between royal influence and commercial power. They focused on whether Camilla's office had helped people close to her receive special treatment, while suppliers protected their own status. That question mattered, because the crown's approval carried money, prestige, and authority far beyond palace walls. Outside Buckingham Palace, one moment captured the anger. A woman lifted the newspaper toward television cameras and declared, "A royal name should never be a private currency." The sentence was replayed throughout the day. Some praised William for confronting misconduct regardless of rank. Others called the exposure a humiliation that could weaken Charles when he was already under strain. William watched the coverage from Kensington Palace. The prince turned off one broadcast after commentators described him as a son preparing to seize control. Catherine remained beside him, silent at first. Then the princess reminded him that anyone protecting the crown would eventually be accused of ambition by those who feared change. The pressure soon reached the vendors. Julian Harcourt issued a written statement surrendering his company's warrant and agreeing to disclose every contact with Camilla's office. The decision confirmed that the investigation had moved beyond rumor. Harcourt was now cooperating, and every private promise could be examined. Camilla responded through an official palace statement. The Queen Consort confirmed that she would permanently withdraw from all future warrant recommendations and would not challenge the findings. Her words were formal, but the cost was deeply personal. Camilla watched the statement being read on television. When her withdrawal was announced, she reached for the remote, turned off the screen, and told her private secretary to cancel every remaining vendor appointment. The crowds eventually dispersed, and the headlines began to change. But inside the royal household, a final verdict still had to be spoken. The investigation ended not with an arrest, an exile, or another palace explosion, but with a permanent change in power. Camilla surrendered all involvement in Royal Warrant decisions. The vendors connected to her private dealings lost their royal status. Charles approved new safeguards, while William accepted responsibility for enforcing them. The scandal wounded a marriage, tested a father and son, and humiliated a queen consort. But it also forced the monarchy to answer one decisive question: was anyone inside the palace beyond accountability? The final review delivered a clear answer. It concluded that Camilla had blurred the line between personal relationships and royal commercial influence by allowing vendors to believe their loyalty could affect future recognition. A royal warrant is the official mark showing that a company regularly supplies the royal household, and losing it can damage both prestige and business. Harcourt's company lost that status permanently, while the second supplier was blocked from applying again for a fixed period. Camilla kept her title and ceremonial duties, but her commercial influence ended. The Queen Consort withdrew from vendor recommendations, patronage discussions, and every process connected to granting or renewing warrants. All private benefits given to people within her circle were declared, valued, and repaid. The decision did not remove her from royal life, but it closed the network that had given her quiet power beyond formal palace control. Camilla met William privately one final time. She told the prince that she would never forgive the way he had exposed the matter, but she accepted that he had uncovered something she should never have allowed. Her admission was not warm, and it was not complete forgiveness. Yet it ended her resistance. William answered with equal restraint. The future king said he had never acted to remove her from Charles's life. He had acted because the crown could not become a promise traded privately between powerful people. Camilla listened without interrupting, and for the first time, she did not challenge his conclusion. Charles entered later and ended the dispute. The king did not ask his son to apologize, and he did not invite his wife to defend herself again. He made clear that the decision was final. Charles placed the completed investigation file inside a cabinet and locked it. Then he handed the key to William. Camilla watched, saddened but composed, as future oversight passed to the heir. New rules demanded written records of vendor contact, independent reviews of benefits, and removal from the process whenever personal interests created conflict. William's exposure did not destroy the monarchy. It proved that survival required the family to confront wrongdoing within its own walls. Camilla lost influence. Charles paid the emotional cost. William emerged not as a victorious son, but as a future king willing to wound those closest to him rather than betray the crown. The palace doors remained closed, but the judgment inside them was complete. Loyalty could protect a family, yet only accountability could protect the crown. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.